Special video, The History of Taxes, How Wars Created the Modern Tax System, from Roman tributes to today's tax offices, a story of power and money. I'm Soldier Peter, and today we're going to take a slight detour from the topic of the origins of World War I. We'll look at the origins of taxes. Taxes are actually more connected to World War I than you might think. I'll show you the darkest secret of states. Taxes were not created to build schools or hospitals. They were created to finance armies and wage war against neighbors. And World War I transformed taxes from a temporary evil into a permanent control over your lives. The birth of tax terror. Antiquity. Ancient Egypt. The first tax offices in history. The Pharaohs' armies marched through villages and seized 20% of the harvest. The purpose? To finance the army and build pyramids. Ancient Rome is even worse. Publicans, the tax collectors, buy the right to collect taxes in a province. Whatever extra they collect, they keep for themselves. The result? Systematic plundering of entire nations. Jesus says, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's." But what belongs to Caesar? Everything he takes by force. You see the pattern. Taxes originate as a tool of oppression, not of service. The state first steals, then promises to give something back. The Middle Ages. Feudal extortion. The Middle Ages. The king needs money for the Crusades. He invents temporary taxes for a holy cause. The English king Richard the Lionheart invents the Saladin tax. 10% of income for the crusade. He promises, just once, only for the holy war. It's a lie. Once people start paying, the taxes never go away. Only the excuse changes. Philip Augustus in France is even more cynical. He invents the taille, a tax for the defense of the realm. But who is he defending against? Against his own subjects when they revolt against the taxes. The most despicable medieval tax. Exactly. Money instead of military service. The nobility pays instead of fighting. The king uses that money to hire mercenaries. The result? Professional armies paid for by citizens' taxes. The modern era. A tax for world wars. The 16th to 18th centuries. Europe turns into a giant battlefield. And wars are expensive. Spain finances armies all over the world with taxes from the Americas. Silver from Potosi kills the Dutch in the 80 Years' War. 80 Years' War. Louis XIV builds Versailles and wages war against all of Europe. Where does he get the money? Taxes. He invents the taille, the gabelle, the aids. Dozens of taxes on every aspect of life. England is the smartest. In 1692, it introduces the window tax. The logic? The more windows you have, the richer you are. The result? People brick up their windows to avoid paying taxes. To this day, you can see houses in England with bricked up windows. All these innovations have one purpose: to finance increasingly expensive wars. Napoleon. The tax revolution. Napoleon is a genius not only in war, but also in taxes. Did he invent the system we still use today? The Code Civil introduces a unified tax system for the entire empire. Every citizen has a tax number. Every transaction is recorded. Every income is tracked. Why? Because the Napoleonic Wars require enormous funding. A large army costs 40% of the French budget. Napoleon's system is so efficient that all of Europe copies it. The Germans, the Austrians, the Russians, everyone adopts the French methods of tax collection. The irony? Napoleon's tax innovations outlive his empire by 200 years. To this day, we pay taxes according to a system designed to finance wars against all of Europe. The First World War. A tax apocalypse. 1914 to 1918. A tax revolution. That changed the world forever. Before the war, most people do not pay direct taxes. The state is financed by tariffs and indirect taxes. During the war, everything changes. War costs an unbelievable amount of money. Britain spends 70% of its GDP on the war. The result? A massive expansion of taxes. Income tax in Great Britain, from 6% to 30%. Germany introduces the Kriegssteuer, a war tax. France doubles all taxes. The USA introduces a federal income tax for the first time. Politicians promise it's only temporary, just for the war. It's a lie. Taxes never return to pre-war levels. The post-war demobilization is a lie. 1918. The war ends. Politicians promise now will lower taxes. It doesn't happen. On the contrary, taxes remain high and even increase. Why? We have to pay off war debts. We have to rebuild the country. We have to help the veterans. We have to prepare for the next war. There's always some excuse. War taxes become peacetime taxes. The most insidious innovation? Withholding tax from wages. Before 1914, people paid their own taxes. They saw how much they were giving to the state. After 1918, the employer deducts taxes before payday. People don't see how much they're actually paying. The modern tax state, the legacy of the First World War. Today we pay income tax, invented for the First World War. VAT, originally a wartime tax on luxury. Social insurance, compensation for war losses. Property tax, originally a war tribute. Total, in developed countries we pay 40 to 60% of our income in taxes. That's more than medieval serfs. The worst part? Most people think it's normal. They don't know that the modern tax system was created to finance the bloodiest wars in history. Today's reality, a permanent war state. Can you remember the last time politicians lowered taxes because they argued we no longer needed that much money? Never. On the contrary, they always need more. For security, healthcare, education, climate, pandemics. True? The modern state is a permanent war state. It doesn't wage war against an external enemy, but against its own citizens. It wages a tax war. The World War taught politicians the most important lesson. People are able to pay much more than they thought. You just need to find the right excuse. And there is never a shortage of excuses. Next time we'll return to the July crisis of 1914 and show what happened from the 2nd to the 6th of August, when extensive and clandestine preparations for a devastating war rapidly escalated and ultimately transformed into a highly secretive and deliberately provocative ultimatum, specifically designed to utterly destroy the sovereignty of Serbia and irrevocably divide the major powers of Europe, setting the stage for widespread conflict. And if you have any opinions on the topic, share them in the comments. Soldier Petr.